Hi everyone, welcome to Birky's book time. You'll notice that Archibald's sitting up today and he's also wearing a special sparkly bow tie. Look, I'm tempting him with a treat because it's somebody's birthday today. It's Mrs. Senior's mum's birthday, Subo. Happy birthday, Subo. She loves Birky's book time. So we thought we'd dress Archibald up in his special birthday bow tie. Actually, Mrs. Senior bought him for Christmas. And to say happy birthday to Sue. She listens every day to Birky's book time and she's a big fan. So thank you, Sue, and I hope you have a lovely day. And Archibald has got dressed up especially for you. Okay, so we're going to be reading today chapter 3, but I'm going to do it in 2 parts because it's quite a long chapter. So here we go. Robert Townsend woke before the alarm sounded and lay listening in the dark. Something had disturbed his sleep. A noise outside. A distant but distinct crack. He glanced at the hands of the clock on the nightstand. 20 to 6. Crack, crack, crack. There it was again. What on earth could it be? Robert jumped out of bed and stepped across the cold boards towards the window. Pulling back the curtain, he wiped the condensation from the glass with the sleeve of his nightshirt and peered out. The village was empty. He scanned the nearby countryside, searching for the source of the sound. In the distance, behind a line of trees, a beam of light cut through the mist and came swooping across the fields. The arc of a lamp of an airship, a big one by the looks of it, and unusual for this time of the morning. Robert knew every flight schedule by heart. Whenever he was at working, he loved to visit the local air station, which served Brackenbridge and the surrounding area. He'd spot the Zeps coming in along the airways, watch the flyboys in their goggles and leather helmets carrying their toolboxes, and the passengers dressed in smart travel clothes queuing on the gangways. One day, he vowed, he'd go up there with them, if he could only overcome his fear of heights. The airship felt different. From its size and path, Robert had a feeling it was not a scheduled flight. When the mist separated, revealing the rest of the craft, he knew for sure he was right. He couldn't see its name or mark, but the ship had the look of a military model. Its silver reflective balloon seemed to suck in the moonlight. A harpoon gun stuck out from its hatch in its hull, and the front of its gondola was covered in metal spikes. Suddenly, the Zep shut off its searchlight and changed course, climbing higher into the clouds. A popping sequence of musket flashes flared across a nearby field, and Robert watched 3 flickering lamps emerge from the woods and float down the hillside. They gathered in the valley and turned along the track towards the village. Something was going on, and he had to know what it was. He grabbed his trousers from where they hung on the end of the bedstead, jumped into them and snapped the braces on over his nightshirt. As he struggled into his winter coat, he took one last look out of the window. Lucky he did, or he would have missed the fox. It tottered along the lane, throwing nervous glances over its shoulder. When it reached the green, it stopped and swayed, glancing about, and its eyes alighted on the line of shops under Robert's window. Robert had the strangest feeling it was reading for the sign of his Dar's shop. But that couldn't be, could it? The fox nodded to itself and limped onwards. It passed the church and the walled graveyard beside the village green, then stumbled into Pincher's Alley, a scrubby track that ran behind a row of terraced air station workers' cottages. Robert waited for its shambling shape to emerge onto the bare field at the alley's far end, but it did not appear. It must have hidden down the lane somewhere, in one of the cottages' backyards. He decided to go look for it. He threw on his socks and shoes and took the candle from his bedside. Then he opened the door and crept along the hallway, treading softly so as not to wake his Dar in the next room. At the base of the stairs, he drew back the rag curtain and crept into the shop. The familiar smell of beeswax furniture polish and the quiet ticking of the clocks made him linger as he crossed the floor. Each clock's shape and sound was so ingrained in him, they felt as comforting as old friends. On nights when he couldn't sleep, he often came down to watch the clocks and listen to their ticking, but not tonight. He put a hand up to silence the bell, opened the door and stepped into the street. A grey haze hung in the air along with the pillowy silence of early morning. Far off, the barking of a dog echoed across the fields. He could have been the only human alive in the world. First he made his way over to the place where the fox had stopped and stared up at the shop. There, on the cold ground amongst the patches of couch grass, he found a tiny cog. It resembled those he was used to seeing in the carriage clocks his da let him repair, only this one was bent out of shape and covered in warm engine oil, viscous as drying blood. Robert knew it could mean only one thing. The fox was Clockwork, a mechanimal. He wiped the cog on his trousers and put it in his pocket. Then he set off across the village, following the mech's route. He passed the church and was about to turn off behind the air station workers' cottages down Pincher's Alley when he heard footsteps in the lane behind. He turned to see a large, leashed dog, an unusual breed, like an Alsatian but bigger. As it came closer, he saw its skin was covered in rivets. A mech dog, then. It was followed by 4 men in long overcoats, carrying steam rifles and lanterns, like those he'd seen from his window. He shuffled aside to let them pass, but they gathered round, letting their mech dog sniff at him. When it got a good noseful of the oily mark on his trouser leg, it let out a low growl. "Shut it!" one of the men told the mechanimal. "Seen anything go past?" another one asked Robert. "Anything unusual?" added a third. The 4th man didn't say anything, merely glared. Robert decided not to answer their questions. He didn't like the look of them. A big fellow with ginger mutton chop sideburns arrived, carrying a steam rifle. His body looked lumpen, like a sack of rocks. He resembled a crusher, only without the policeman's helmet. Above his upturned collar, his cheeks were as red as bulging blood sausages. But what made Robert gulp was the pair of silver mirrors sewn into the raw sockets of the man's eyes. Scars emanated from them, crisscrossing his cheeks and running up under the brim of his hat. "Who are you?" demanded the man, peering down a vein blistered nose, until Robert's face appeared reflected in his mirrored eyes. Robert's words dried in his throat. He took a deep breath. "I live here, sir," he finally managed to wheeze. "My colleagues asked if you'd seen anything unusual go past." The mutton-chop man scratched at his eye socket, perilously close to his mirrored right eye. "What kind of a thing?" Robert asked, his voice a strangled whisper. "A fox." The mutton-chop man pressed his thick lips together tightly. It seemed as if he was about to reveal something more, but then he decided against it. "Never mind." He jabbed a podgy finger at Robert. "Get back to your house." "I saw your fox run that way," Robert blurted, pointing down the street that led out of town. "You're certain?" The mutton-chopped man's mirrors betrayed nothing, but he didn't seem convinced. He glanced down at the dog straining on its leash, pulling towards the alley. "Oh, yes," Robert answered. "I watched it from my window." "Which window?" "Oh, one over there." He waved at the row of shops on the other side of the village, keeping it vague in case the men were thinking of returning. The mutton-chop man nodded. "Thanks, lad. We'll be getting along. And you should too. A young boy like you won't be out on such a cold November morning when there's danger about." He turned to go, and the others and the dog followed. Robert dawdled on his way home, watching them, making sure they took the path he'd suggested. They hurried through the village, but when they reached the last house on the left, they stopped, confused. The dog seemed to have lost the scent and wandered about aimlessly, trying to pick it up. For a moment it seemed they would come back, but then the animal pulled them onwards. When they passed the last fence of the village, a black steam wagon appeared at the edge of the woods, smoke puffing from its chimney stack. The mutton-chop man pointed towards it, giving instructions, and the group split. The other 4 men making off down the road with their dog, while he walked back into town. Robert decided to make himself scarce. He'd go look for the fox later, when the mutton-chop fellow was gone. Besides, he had chores to do before opening time. Better get to it. As he trudged back to the clockmaker's shop, The low morning sun shone against its frontage, burning off the last of the mist and making the clocks in the window gleam. And I'm going to stop there because it's quite a long chapter, so I'm going to read the rest later. Okay, I hope you're all well. I hope you're having a good day. And a big happy birthday to Sue. I hope you have a lovely day, Sue, and I hope you enjoy this reading. All right, see you all later. Bye.